Configuring your Demandbase form solution, it's important to make sure that your form template matches the configuration specified inside of your Demandbase tag. What this means is that you'll want to make sure that the input fields inside of your form template have names or ID attributes that match the names or IDs that are specified in your Demandbase tag. Here, you'll see that I have a snippet of code that specifies the particular forms field map for the form page that I have here. What this field map defines is the exact configuration that the Demandbase tag expects out of your form template. The left side of the data object, before the colon, specifies a Demandbase data attribute. On the right side of the colon is the name or ID attribute of the input field that Demandbase data attribute is supposed to be pushing into. So for instance, at the very top, we'll see that Demandbase SID is here being specified to be pushed into an input field with the name or ID attribute of db_Demandbase_SID. If I go to this form page and I search for db_Demandbase_SID, you'll see that we have this input field right here. It's hidden, but if I add Demandbase to this page, you'll see that even though it's hidden, we notice that a value all of a sudden appears inside of this field. This means that the Demandbase API call has fired properly and has returned the Demandbase data. Once the API call has finished returning, your Demandbase tag will execute code that takes that data and then starts appending it to the input fields on your form. For instance, if we go back to the field map, we'll see that industry information should be sent to an input field with a name or ID attribute of db_industry. If I search for db_industry inside of this form, you'll notice that manufacturing has come back as the value for industry. To see the full Demandbase data object that gets returned, you can always type demandbase.connectors.webform.companyprofile to see the actual response that gets returned from the servers at the API endpoint. Here, I'm spoofing my IP address as General Electric, so you'll see that the industry coming back is indeed manufacturing. And this is exactly what we'll be seeing inside of this form. So what happens if your Demandbase tag is configured improperly? Or what happens if your form template doesn't have the correct spelling for an input field? Well, we can see what happens if I change the DB sub-industry, for instance, to sub-industry. I'll be making this change behind the scenes in the actual code. So please hold on while this change is being applied. Now that I've applied the change behind the scenes, we can observe what happens when there is a mismatch between the configuration inside the Demandbase tag and the configuration inside the actual form template. In this situation, we changed the field that the Demandbase tag expects the sub-industry data to go into to a field with just a name or ID of sub-industry instead of db_sub-industry. However, on the form, we'll notice that db_sub-industry still exists. So when I add Demandbase to this form, DB sub-industry doesn't actually get populated with any of the company profile information, as we'll see here. The sub-industry comes back from the API response as industrial, but the value, as you see right here, for this input field remains blank. And we'll see that it's different from all the other fields that are configured properly. For instance, we'll go back into the DB_industry input field, and we'll notice that manufacturing actually gets populated inside of this input field. So the moral of the story here is that when you're troubleshooting your demand-based form template, it's very important to pay attention to the spellings of the name or ID of your input fields on your form template, and also to make sure that those specific fields that are configured inside of your demand-based tag actually exist on the form template. If the fields don't exist or are spelled incorrectly, then the demand-based data does not actually get populated into those specific input fields. If you ever run into this problem, you should get in touch with your demand-based point of contact, like your demand-based CSM or demand-based solutions engineer, to troubleshoot this issue for you and make sure that the demand-based tag is configured properly for all of your form templates.